Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really special. We're going to be unpacking this deeply personal, incredibly culturally rich essay called Roots That Hold Us. And what we're doing here is exploring one author's lived experiences, literally tracing their journey from the kitchen table to the classroom and even out onto the martial arts mat. We're looking at what children actually gain when they grow up with a loving mother and father. Now, just to set the stage, this isn't some dry, statistical deep dive, okay? It's a real, heartfelt reflection on family, culture, and the kind of foundations we build for the next generation. So let's just jump right in. I want you to just picture this for a second. The clatter of pots in the kitchen, a bachata playing low on the radio, a mother's voice, and right there, underneath it all, a father's steady laugh. The author points out that this specific sound, that deep, reassuring laugh, was literally a signal that the house was safe. You knew it before you even walked through the front door. And what's so captivating about this is how these tiny, everyday moments completely weave together to create this invisible, but totally unshakable environment of reassurance for a kid. All right, moving into part one, the cultural foundation. You know, to truly get where the author is coming from here, we have to look at the cultural soil that all these memories grew in. Take this concept of family as the First Nation. The author explains that growing up in a Puerto Rican or Dominican household, or really anywhere in the Caribbean, family isn't just a side support system. It's not just a part of your life. It is the life. It absolutely comes before the job. It comes way before the friend group. In this cultural context, the mother and father are viewed as the bedrock. They're the founding pillars for literally everything downstream: discipline, faith, work ethic, the whole shebang. So where does all this world building actually happen? Well, usually it's right in Abuela's kitchen. The author notes that Sunday isn't just a day off, it's a major gathering. It's this active weekly event where the family constitution gets written and rewritten over massive plates of arroz con habichuelas. Man, it's a fantastic metaphor, because these values aren't just being taught in some boring abstract lecture, right? They're being actively forged week after week in these incredibly joyful, shared cultural spaces. Let's look at part two, the quiet superpower. So, how does this cultural root system actually play out in the wider world? Well, the author brings over 16 years of real-world experience teaching and mentoring kids to identify this framework, something they call the quiet superpower of kids raised by committed parents. And it essentially breaks down into four distinct psychological traits: baseline safety, two different mirrors, a working definition of commitment, and an anchor for identity. Let's break these down, because the logic here is honestly fascinating. First up on the list is baseline safety. Kids with this kind of foundation, they walk into a room with a really calm confidence. And it's not because their lives are perfect. The author is quick to note they still face financial struggles and really hard seasons, but it's because the relationship underneath them isn't shaking. Think about it. When a kid watches their parents argue, but then watches them repair and reconcile, they learn a massive life-altering lesson. They learn that conflict doesn't mean the end of love. And they carry that exact baseline safety straight into their own adult marriages and workplaces. It's huge. The next trait is this idea of getting two different mirrors. The author suggests that mothers and fathers often provide distinct but totally complementary reflections for a child. So a father might roughhouse, push the limits, and encourage a kid to get up and try it again when they fall. Meanwhile, a mother might hold the emotional temperature of the house, notice all the little unsaid things, and make sure that child feels unconditionally loved. The big takeaway? Experiencing both the strong and the tender gives a kid a much fuller, well-rounded picture of what it actually means to be human. Another critical piece of this internal puzzle is having an anchor for identity. The author observes this very real psychological weight in literally knowing where you come from, recognizing your dad's stubbornness in your own jawline, or suddenly hearing your mom's laugh coming out of your own mouth. It creates an internal home base. It grounds a child. Honestly, no matter how far they travel or how chaotic the world gets, they have this settled sense of exactly who they are and where they come from. Which brings us to part three, a working definition of commitment. Now, to really grasp the author's take on commitment, we kind of have to look at how they view the institution of marriage itself. Drawing from a deep faith tradition, the author draws a really sharp contrast between two different views. On one side, you have marriage treated mostly as a feeling, maintained only until it gets inconvenient, which makes it feel somewhat disposable. But on the flip side, which is what the author advocates for, marriage is viewed as a covenant. It's sacred. It assumes upfront that there will be real difficulty requiring sacrifice and humility, and it is something you intentionally rebuild when it cracks. And that leads us perfectly into one of the most impactful quotes from the entire piece. Love isn't primarily a feeling. It's a decision you renew especially on the days you don't feel like it. When kids watch their parents model this specific kind of sacrificial love, when they see patience and forgiveness just lived out day after ordinary day, it acts as a complete masterclass. It's discipleship in real time. You just cannot fake that kind of long-term formation. All right, let's pivot to part 4, observations from the classroom. So how does all this nice internal grounding actually manifest externally? Well, the author has seen these traits play out vividly in the real world, specifically on the martial arts mat and in the classroom. They often teach this concept of strength that serves versus strength that dominates. Real, mature power is disciplined. It's used to protect, not to harm. And the author observes a direct line between a stable two-parent home and this healthy type of strength. Kids with that solid foundation, they just don't feel a desperate need to dominate a room or constantly prove themselves, simply because they aren't trying to fill a psychological hole. The hole was never dug in the first place. This grounding also creates an incredible template for healthy attachment. Because these kids already understand what true commitment looks like, they actually take correction better. They process discipline not as a threat, but as proof that someone believes they're worth the effort of shaping. And that is a game changer. It means they can go out and build friendships and romantic relationships using a healthy template from day one, rather than having to stumble through painful trial and heartbreak to figure it all out as adults. Now, I want to hit pause right here because the author makes a very, very crucial point. They explicitly state, strength and love take many shapes, and I have deep respect for every parent in every configuration doing their best by their children. They make it absolutely crystal clear that kids raised by single parents, working 2 jobs, by grandparents stepping up to the plate, or by mothers who bravely walked away from unsafe situations, they can and absolutely do grow into extraordinary, resilient people. This whole analysis isn't about diminishing those heroic efforts at all. It's just about honestly identifying the specific unique benefits they've observed in the two-parent model. Let's head into our final section, part 5, carrying the gift forward. As we look at how to carry this gift into the future, the author's core belief, drawn from both their cultural roots and all those years of professional observation, is that a committed two-parent home offers a rare and incredibly precious gift. It basically gives a child a running head start that is notoriously hard to replicate. You get 2 pillars instead of 1, 2 mirrors instead of 1, and you get a living, breathing, everyday example of covenant love that they get to witness firsthand. But, and this is so important, the author also leaves us with a deeply empowering message for anyone who didn't grow up with that kind of foundation. If you came from a broken home, that absence does not define your ceiling. The sheer determination to break the cycle and build something totally different for your own kids is, as the author puts it, its own kind of strength. And honestly, it's perhaps the hardest one kind of strength there is. Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to chew on. Whether you're lucky enough to be building on a really strong legacy, or you are bravely out there forging a brand new one from scratch, the question remains, regardless of your family history, how can you model this idea of covenant love and create that solid ground for the next generation? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.